With two Final Fantasies under my belt, I had to see what all the hubbub's about and decided to dive right into the Big Daddy, Final Fantasy VII. If you're new here, I'm playing all the numbered entries for the first time and giving my thoughts. Watch my video on FF9 first if you want, but it don't really matter. Let's get into it. Fortunately, this one needs no introduction. Forget JRPGs, Final Fantasy VII is one of the most well-known and well-revered video games of all time, genre aside. Having grown up without the original PlayStation or friends who had one, this game and many other PS1 icons passed me by for most of my life. Nintendo's latest console has begun to change that, however, and as with Final Fantasy IX, I played this Square classic on my Switch. That means I once again had access to the 3x speed up function, as well as a permanent limit break state, which I never used, but it is there. Man, I used that speed up though for the majority of the game, aside from story scenes. So while my playthrough clocked in around 44 hours to finish damn near all the content, including every materia and all 3 of the weapons, it was more like 20 hours in real time. Handy for someone like me who has a ton of RPGs in his backlog. I doubt I would have had the patience for all this at normal speed, so I'd say Square Enix knows what they're doing with these re-releases. Their audience has an abundance of choice in games these days, and epic, time-consuming RPGs that enthralled us in the past can sometimes feel like slogs in an era where slow battles with lengthy attack animations are no longer in vogue. I wish more publishers had the foresight to follow the model set by Square, Capcom, and a few others in this respect. Can you tell I'm having trouble starting this review properly? I love Final Fantasy VII, and there is much to love. Suppose I'll start with the combat, since that's the main appeal of the genre for me. I had heard of materia prior to playing this game. I had heard it being praised, but I never quite knew what the fuss was about or what exactly materia was. I get it now. Having played FF9 already, I can see where the equipment system in that game evolved from, but I have to say, I find materia more fun. The ability to combine materia into loads of combinations is a blast throughout the game, since there's always new toys to try that are actually useful. My most common complaint with JRPGs is repetitive combat, but during FF7 I was constantly switching up which materia I use, both to experiment with everything and maximize leveling them all up. Fully mastering a materia to automatically get a copy of it is a stroke of expertly balanced brilliance on the developer's part, and my mind was blown when I discovered master materia, which grant a character every ability of every materia of the same class. Then I realized you can get as many master materia as you want, and I'm still collecting pieces of my brain off the carpet. Of course, you gotta put the time into it, hours upon hours of blood, sweat, and oh, would you look at that, it's my old friend 3x speed up. I love you, buddy. Anyway, there's a sense of freedom and why not to the system that modern JRPGs don't often attempt. It feels overpowered to be able to master an all materia in very little time and sell it for huge profits. It feels overpowered to quickly grind up an Ultima materia in order to clone it and use it with quad magic and all. It feels overpowered to exploit the chocobo system to get a guaranteed cold chocobo without ever racing. And you know what? All of this is overpowered, especially with speed up, and it's what makes the combat so fun and gameplay addictive. The game's better for it, and I suspect this is what kept the many petulant kids who had asked their parents for Madden, but the guy at Babbage's had recommended Final Fantasy instead, playing long into the night. To speak more of combat beyond materia, the pace of the ATB system feels much faster than in FF9. It's a shame that a later entry took a step back in that regard. Then again, Square was pushing the PlayStation to its max capacity by that point. The limit break system, which I believe I've read is new to the series in this entry, has splashy animations and can get you out of a pinch, but the game is awfully easy, so that won't be often. While some of the level 4 breaks are among the best damage dealing options, I had more fun screwing around with the different materia builds, and if limit breaks weren't in the game, I wouldn't notice. It's hard to complain about having more choices in combat though, when the core system is as fantastic as materia. The super bosses are appropriately difficult for the most part, requiring you to optimize every facet of combat while still allowing multiple strategies. It's pure glee taking down ruby weapons, and strategy's the only thing that matters in that fight. I get why this formula of main game plus super bosses became a template for many JRPGs beyond Final Fantasy. Sure, this ain't the first game to do it, not even the first Final Fantasy game, but FF7's influence on the genre is too massive to ignore. Many of the publishers we know now were small guys in the 90s trying to break into the West in a big way, and when Square laid the nice Roman footpath that's Final Fantasy VII, it's tough for others not to use it too. Overall, 7's combat system is strong in every respect, and I would have liked to spend 100 plus hours grinding out materia had I played this when I was a kid. Enough about the mechanics. The main reason FF7's popular has gotta be its storytelling. Not just the story, but also how it's presented. From what I understand, 7 goes hog wild, building on the previous game's futuristic themes, introducing players to the most beautiful world and visuals of the time, and of course, all in 3D. While I never had a PlayStation, I played many other games during the 90s, and I remember what they looked like. The Nintendo 64 had nothing like this, and even now I can see why 7 was considered insane back then. Sure, the N64 was powerful and could push stunning visuals and particle effects, but FF7 adds tons of FMVs that seamlessly flow into gameplay in a way that I don't recall seeing until the PS2 generation. Character models outside of battle may look rough, but they're used in action scenes that are often more exciting than anything you'd find in a JRPG today. Maybe that's my nostalgia for the simple graphic style talking. My 9-year-old self would have gone nuts for this. Nowadays, I appreciate the visuals and especially the music more than ever. The story itself is weirdly presented. Most party members are largely ignored aside from a few lines here and there, and the game instead focuses on Cloud's internal strife, leaving you to fill in the gaps on what exactly is happening with the larger plot about the planet and Sephiroth. That's okay, since I'm a combat-first kind of guy, and I found it easier to follow the emotions the game conveyed rather than distinct plot events anyway. Even the ending is unclear, given all the debate I've seen online, but open-ended endings work for me, and FF7's nails it. While not typically what I look for in a JRPG, all this sets the mood for the pseudo-steampunk world and art style the PlayStation was capable at the time, and it works well. I don't have much to say about the characters, but they were all pleasant enough. There's just not much to them aside from Cloud's romance with Aerith, but that arc fell flat for me because I knew the outcome. It might be the most infamous spoiler in all of gaming, and as much as I wish I could have gone in unspoiled, I recognize it's not possible given my long history with talking about games online. Oh well. The game's world, by the way, is stunning, even compared to FF9. In many ways, Final Fantasy VII feels more expansive than that successor, perhaps because it has more optional content and your access to the world is opened up at a more interesting pace. I constantly felt like new lands, caves, and rivers were opening up to me, each bringing the possibility of new, powerful materia. Constant changes in traversal abilities keep things exciting, such as gaining the ability to sail, but only in the shallows, then being able to fly, but only land on certain terrain, to finally getting a gold chocobo and trouncing all over the map to hilarious effect. There's something utterly charming about these PlayStation-era visuals that sucks me in. I saved my favorite subject for last. This game has the best soundtrack of any JRPG I've played. Soft, calming version of that famous arpeggio prelude when first booting up? That's one of the best title screens ever. The intro tune as the game shows off Midgar and Aerith before transitioning into the banging bombing mission track? That's one of the best game openings ever. The battle theme that perfectly sets the stage, builds and releases tension several times, and repeats in a way that never gets old? That's the best RPG battle theme I've heard yet. And that's all in the first hour. Look, y'all know the soundtrack is great. It's filled with dank electronic mood setters, triumphant adventuring accompaniments, and sweeping orchestral pieces. If you haven't listened to it, well, don't. Play the game and experience it there. Alright, tier list time. It's looking kinda sad and empty so far, but I'm making progress. I'll say it right off the bat, 7 goes straight to S tier. 100% nostalgia free, it holds up wonderfully, and if I might be so bold, I'd say I had every bit as magical an experience as those who played it back in the day. I adore this game. Some days I might say even more than 12, but no, I'd still put 12 a tiny bit higher. It's hard to compare since they're so different, but I tend to favor games with huge worlds, deep mechanics, and lots of content, if all else is equal. Same reason I'd rank Xenoblade Chronicles X higher than Xenoblade 1. But also don't forget 12 was my first Final Fantasy, so make of that what you will, but 7's up there with it for now, definitely a rank above what I would normally consider an A. Final Fantasy VII is superlative, RPGs don't get much better. Next up, another of the most beloved games in the series. I can't help myself, can I? After hearing about it endlessly for 2 decades, it's finally time to check out Final Fantasy X. Thanks for watching, leave a like for that algorithm, subscribe for more videos on Final Fantasy and other RPGs, and have a blessed day.